Alright people, welcome back to the channel. Make sure you subscribe because we're about to do some fun stuff over the winter time. And I say winter time because I live in Canada. We're at a weird transition zone where we can't really work on our car because there's nothing to do. We can't take it to the track because the track isn't going to be open anymore. And we can't start on Virginia's car because we're going to be moving garages in a week. But I have an alternative for you. This is Tokyo's motorcycle exhaust. This was one of the very first TIG welding fab projects that I had done. And I mean, it didn't come out bad. The welds were obviously way too hot now that I know what I'm doing. But we're gonna strip this off and this off. And we're going to attempt to replace it with this. Now, if you think this turbo looks familiar, you're probably right. Because if you're new to the channel, I put 4 of these turbos on a Civic, and it worked okay. It made about 20 pounds of boost wide open. But we're gonna put 1 on the 750cc engine, and we're going to attempt to boost this thing. Now, we're only gonna run low boost. It's mainly for just for fun. I can't be left alone. I just have to put turbos on everything. But we're going to attempt to do it on low boost, 5 pounds, keep the stock timing. We'll run like 91 octane fuel in it, get a power commander. It'll tune reasonably well. This thing runs on 87 already, so upping the fuel, you'd probably be safe with the stock NA timing in it. So let's start ripping this thing apart, I guess. Kind of looking at the setup, it's looking like it's probably gonna go somewhere right here, like this. Quick little short runner down here, then we'll merge into this one from over this side. Like a little 90 elbow here and straight into there. No intercooler on this setup. The only piece is like getting your foot around to this side here. It's gonna be a little, like the brake side. It's gonna hit on the turbo a little bit. So I'm gonna try and shove it in there as much as I can. So I cut the ends off. We're gonna reuse these because these bolt up. They have like the right flanges and stuff on them. This one's probably leaking a little tiny bit. And then we're gonna end up using this Schedule 10 piping here. It's 304 stainless. Kind of fits exactly on there. And then if we merge those in both into the same size piping, I believe they fit pretty close inside this as well. So we gotta make a flange for this. I need to get a bigger piece of pipe, or a bigger, like a flat piece, so we can make a flange out of this with. Okay, we have a hole cut out in this piece of plate that we have. I think this is like 1/4 inch steel. It'll work, it'll be fine. Ideally, you'd like something a little bit thicker so when you weld to it, it doesn't warp at all, but this is gonna work. We don't have the gasket, I somehow lost it, so what we're gonna do is reuse some tape. Just put a hard object against the machine surface and it cuts away the excess tape there on the outside. And we'll have to do it on the middle circle too. Tried to film and do this at the same time, but this is a rough template here. Ideally, we're just trying to get our bolt holes lined up because those are the hard ones to do. Okay, so we have our little flange made here. It's probably hot, so I'm not gonna grab it with my bare hands. Here's our little flange. It's not super awesome by any means. And it's gonna bolt onto our turbo, hopefully. I didn't even check to see if it's gonna, so I might lie to you here. It might not even bolt onto our turbo. The holes are all offset, so it only goes one way. Hot. So what we're gonna do is, I have this collar. This is like an LS collar for a converter, torque converter, helps center it in the crank. But it necks down nicely and it welds up perfectly to our piece here. So we might end up using this on here because it gives us more space for our bolts to get in there. We're gonna clean off this plate here because we can't weld to that. Bolt it down tight to our flange so it doesn't warp, and then weld this piece onto it because we like to party. Now, I personally love to use these little flap wheels to clean off stuff to make it bare metal, but to each their own. This just makes an easier job of it. I AC welded last, so we're gonna go DC. We're gonna go I don't know, let's just play it on the safe side. We'll go 100 amps. And these are my settings, just very basic, straight DC, 102. And that's it, no pulse, no anything else. There, our little turbo flange is welded on. Should work pretty good. We'll let that cool down, and we have to surface it as well, just on the belt sander to get it flat. That way we can get a seal, because when you do weld it on one side, it kind of tends to warp. That's why we have it bolted up still. I had to remove one bolt at a time to weld the little tiny bit that I couldn't get behind the bolt, but you know, that's the way it goes. All right. This is kind of where it's sitting right now. It's just kind of tucked in there. I did tack up a couple little pipes here just to get it in place and held up, and it seems like it's in a pretty decent spot where like we'll be able to make a quick little bend here and then come up over and bend there. It's gonna get a little bit warm maybe. Maybe we can get a little tiny turbo blanket for the back of this thing, but maybe even tip it down slightly, but it's kind of level and it kind of looks nice where it is. One runner here. What I should do, it's only tacked together. What I should do is I should split this runner now, weld another 90 on it. That way we can go to the back and just break off our tacks there on the turbo side and continue on from there really. Okay, I picked up our other piece of pipe here. This is going to be the straight section that goes from this one to this one. But what I'm going to do first is we're going to pull off this section and we're going to get this welded. That way we can get all the distortion and shrinkage out of this pipe before we start trying to make this one. Because we will not be putting a flex section in any of this, it'd be nice to get that to line up perfectly over here before we start building this one. And then like if we tacked everything up right now and welded it and it shrunk, it would not fit at all. Guaranteed. So we're just going to weld this section first. We're going to back purge it and just get welding. First thing, we moved to a 308 stainless filler wire now. This is 1/16. We were at a 309 stainless at a 045, so it's a bit thicker and different rod style. 309 is for dissimilar metals, stainless to mild. 308 is for the same, it's for the stainless, so we're going stainless to stainless, so that's what we're going to use here. And we went with a tiny bit thicker rod because we have our joint to fill now. I'm not really technical on welding, so if you do want to figure out more on welding, there's a lot of welding channels on YouTube. Tin foil, your best friend when back purging. We're going to put the back purge somewhere in here, stuff this full of tin foil. And my tin foil is a bit messed up. I dropped it on the damn floor, put a dent in it, and now every time you unwrap it, go around the dent, it splits. So now I have 2 halves of tin foil. But we're gonna use tin foil to fill our gaps. And it's just relatively cheap. So find whatever works for you. A lot of guys use purge plugs, a lot of guys use tin foil. I like to use masking tape on anything that isn't gonna see a ton of heat. And our line comes in here. It's gonna circle through the turbo or whatever. We're just gonna have to wait a couple minutes here to let it, or not a couple minutes, but a little tiny bit to let it push through once I turn it on. And then we'll start welding up all our joints.
When the stars align with a certain passing so fast that you'll miss it if you blink. So now watch out. There's a billion stars right on the brink of now in the Milky Way. In the Milky Way. An emptiness so vast yet so complete. It makes me feel so small standing on my feet. Just a speck of life, so discreet. Nothing really matters, it's a deceit. Hey now, it's passing so fast that you'll miss it if you blink. So now watch out. There's a billion stars right on the brink of now in the Milky Way.
Of course my battery died during that time-lapse of welding, so I have no idea how much footage I got from that. Here's our end result. I can still work on my consistency. I haven't done much thick material like this yet, so this is kind of a newish thing to me. But I think it came out alright. I might be a little bit hot because of the color in the welds. Once this cools down a bit, we'll put it on the bike and then we'll start working on the other side. Well, I cut this piece out, but it's gonna be too short here. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna weld this section up that we built, get that all welded up, get all the distortion of that. So our last piece to make is gonna be this middle one. And mainly, we'll get this one in and we can put a ton of tacks on it while it's in place. And then when we pull it off, when we weld it, it probably won't move as much as if we were to leave something like this to be the last weld or something. So we'll pull this off, weld this piece, and then make our piece in the middle here, and then that should be it for the hot side from the engine into the turbo.
Oh, if only we could understand the breath. It's possible that we may never know the depth. Hey now, it's passing so fast that you'll miss it if you blink. So now watch out. There's a billion stars right on the brink of now in the Milky Way. In the Milky Way. It's passing so fast that you'll miss it if you blink. So now watch out.
That's where we are. The last piece should be in the bandsaw here right now. It's a little tiny bit of an angle because this is not exactly straight, so we needed like a 5-degree angle. So I put the one end on a 5-degree angle. We should be able to just like rotate that pipe and make it fit in there really well. And we got our centerpiece in there. Now I'm just hoping that I have enough tack welds on this. I got one here, one over there. Like enough on here that when we pull it off, it's not gonna move much when we weld it, because if it moves any, it's not gonna fit back in place. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for right now. So this is what I was afraid of with this setup. It's just slightly not long enough to fit in both of those holes at the same time. It shrunk down a little tiny bit when we welded it. So I do have a flex section here that we could probably put in right here somewhere. And then we'll just have to brace the turbo after. So we'll cut out a piece right in the middle here, weld this flex section in, and then hopefully that saves our issue, I guess. Solves our issue. Wow, that's how much it ended up pulling there. considering that was one bandsaw blade width. So we're just gonna grab our flex section here, figure out like how far we want it, and then weld this in. Hopefully that'll fix our issue here. All right, let's see if it changes our result here now. And by change our result, I mean, does it fit anymore? Again, it's still hot, but. Perfect. We can squeeze it just enough to get it to go on there. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? We got exhaust going into our turbo now. The whole hot side is done here. Next up, we're just gonna put the turbo front on. I don't have an oil feed or return, but I kind of want to start it without it just to see. We'll put a bit of oil on the top of the turbo, start it just to see if it spins and see how it sounds, so we get a little general idea of what it sounds like compared to what it used to sound like. Also, disclaimer, I know you're not supposed to put a flex section pre-turbo. They can come apart and the windings can go into the turbo. For what we spent on this, I'm gonna roll the dice, and well, if it eats this turbo, it's another $120 turbo, and then we'll put a bellows in it if we have to. The only reason I didn't get a bellows was I had this little flex section here, and a bellows is like $60 to buy a 1.5 inch one, so that'll do for now, and if it ever comes apart, we'll address that problem then. So we've got a drop of oil in there, just enough to lubricate the bearings. I have no idea how to start this bike, but is there a key somewhere? I forgot to put the wastegate flapper on. So it's just coming out the gate right now. It's spinning! I mean, that's kind of cool. We're leaking out our little bit of oil we put in it. So we do have to build our little charge piping. I might order a 90-degree bend here, a cast elbow. That way we can just ride along here into there. This is gonna be really tight and it's gonna be a little bit warm, but it's the best I could do by like keeping a lot of area here for functionality, so we can still get his foot and stuff here. Our exhaust pipe still has to go down the back, but it is way, way quieter than it was with these little zoomy headers on there. Alrighty, just listen out to me. I had an idea. It didn't work. I pulled the gas tank off this. I was like sitting on my couch. I was like, wonder if I can make that come out the other side. And I was like, it looks like it might go out the other side because it's in a V and it's in the center. But we were gonna move this where the throttle body connects to. I wanted to flip it around the other side. That'd be so good to have the pipe go that way, around to the front, and then to here, whatever. But there's a top bolt here and a bottom bolt on the other side. So they angled them both this way. So when I flip it around, then the top bolt be on the other side and the bottom bolt's on the, so it doesn't fit. Unfortunately, it'd be so good if this fit out the other side and we just like swap the injector plugs. And even the throttle cables would fit the other side, but unfortunately it didn't work. Also, I forgot that I had V-band clamps here. So instead of using this really cheap flex section in our downpipe, we could have used one of these nice V-band clamps. So I might end up cutting that out after and installing one of these instead somewhere in there, because that'd be much better. This thing is wires on the inside. It's bound to fail eventually. This thing, a bit better. But that's all for this video, guys. That's like 2 days of work here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for part 2. And peace easy and get heavy.